My name is Alara Vance. I'm 32 years old, and my life, as I knew it, unraveled in the soft glow of my father's 60th birthday candles. It happened in our family home in Aspen, a place I'd always associated with the scent of pine and the quiet comfort of belonging. Imagine a room alive with the murmur of happy conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the warmth of a crackling fire. Then, picture my father turning away from his guests, his kind eyes finding mine across the oak dining table. His voice, though quiet, cut through the festive air like a shard of ice. "Alara," he said, his gaze steady and serious. "The $150,000 I sent you. What have you done with it?" The breath caught in my throat. My heart gave a painful lurch. 150,000? The silver fork I was holding slipped from my numb fingers, its clatter against the porcelain plate a shockingly loud sound in the sudden, deep silence. "What? What do you mean?" I managed to whisper, my voice a stranger's, across the table. My sister's face, usually a mask of curated perfection, became a canvas of stark white. Her manicured hands trembled as she reached for her water glass, her knuckles turning bone pale. The warmth of the room evaporated, replaced by a chilling tension that seemed to emanate from the very walls. I had been given a gift, a foundation upon which to build my dream of opening a sustainable textile boutique. But in that moment, I understood with a cold, sickening certainty that someone else in my family had woven their own design into my future. Betrayal, I learned then, doesn't shout. It whispers your name in a room full of people, leaving you to wonder how you never heard it before. For the past decade, my world had been Portland, Oregon. I loved its gentle, persistent rain, the way the city smelled of damp earth and roasting coffee, and the quiet rhythm of my life there. I worked as a senior textile designer for Verdant Weaves, a company that championed ethical sourcing and sustainable fabrics. It was meaningful work, surrounded by creatives who cared about the planet as much as they did about aesthetics. But deep within me, a quieter, more personal dream had taken root, my own boutique. I called it the wandering thread in my daydreams, a haven of handcrafted textiles, natural dyes, and clothing with a story. A place where beauty and integrity could coexist. A few months before my father's birthday, that dream had felt as if it were finally blooming into reality. He'd called me one Tuesday morning, his voice filled with a warmth that traveled through the phone line. He told me he was transferring $500,000 into my account. Not a loan, he'd insisted, but a gift. "It's your turn, Alara," he'd said. "Go build something beautiful." I'd sat on my window seat, watching the drizzle trace patterns on the glass, and wept with a gratitude so profound it felt like an ache in my chest. His belief in me was a more precious gift than the money itself. I immediately began my research, scouting potential locations in Aspen. I'd grown up there, and the thought of returning, of planting my dream in the soil of my childhood, felt right. That money was my foundation, the seed from which my future would grow, and I guarded it with a fierce sense of purpose. But then, a week before the party, my sister, Chloe, called. Her voice was unusually brisk, stripped of its usual lilting cadence. "Dad's not feeling well," she'd announced, without any preamble. "He's got a nasty flu. We've had to cancel his birthday party. There's no need for you to fly out." A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. It didn't sound right. Dad's 60th was a milestone he'd been eagerly anticipating for a year. He'd meticulously planned the menu, curated the guest list, and spoken of it with the excitement of a child. Why would he cancel and not tell me himself? I questioned Chloe, asking about his symptoms, offering to help, but she was evasive. "It's just a bad cold, honestly. He's sleeping. Don't worry about it." Her tone was dismissive, as if my concern were an inconvenience she needed to swat away. Hanging up, I couldn't shake the feeling that a crucial piece of the story was missing. Chloe and I had never been close. Our lives were woven from different threads. While I found joy in quiet walks and the texture of raw silk, she thrived on a life of glittering surfaces, European getaways, exclusive parties, and a revolving door of designer acquisitions. Growing up, my things often became her things, borrowed without asking and returned, if at all, with a careless apology. Her stories were always grander, her successes shinier, leaving my own achievements feeling muted in comparison. I had long ago learned to create a gentle distance between us, a space to protect my own sense of self. But this felt different from her usual self-absorption. This felt like a deliberate wall being built between me and our father. I scrolled through my recent texts. Nothing from Dad. That was the most jarring part. He was a caller, a checker-in. A simple "how's your week, kiddo" text was a staple of our relationship. If he were truly sick, he would have called me himself, his voice raspy but reassuring. The silence was more alarming than Chloe's lie. A quiet suspicion, unwelcome but persistent, began to form in my mind. On impulse, I booked a flight to Aspen anyway. I wouldn't miss his 60th, sick or not. I had his gift ready, a beautiful vintage leather-bound journal and a classic fountain pen, something for him to fill with his thoughts and plans for the next chapter of his life. It was a gift that spoke of him, of the quiet thoughtfulness I so admired. As I packed my small suitcase, my thoughts kept circling back to Chloe. While pulling up my banking app to confirm my savings, a flicker of gratitude for the $500,000 warming me, my eyes caught on a transaction from a few weeks prior that I hadn't registered before. It was a deposit notification, buried in a long list of automated payments. The description was vague, just a reference number with no sender name. My heart did a strange little flutter. It was likely nothing, a system glitch, but in the context of Chloe's call, it felt ominous. I called my Aunt Genevieve, my father's younger sister. She was my anchor in the often turbulent waters of our family, a woman of profound grace and sharp insight. When I told her the party was cancelled, I could almost hear her perfectly sculpted eyebrow arch over the phone. "Cancelled," she said, her voice laced with skepticism. "That's news to me. I was just over at their house yesterday helping your father decide between the Cabernet and the Pinot Noir for the main course. He was perfectly fine, Ilara. Positively buzzing." My grip on the phone tightened. So it was a lie. A deliberate, calculated lie to keep me away. Aunt Genevieve paused, then added, her voice dropping slightly, "You know, speaking of odd things, I saw Chloe at the gallery last week. She was wearing a new timepiece that must have cost more than my car. She's been extravagant lately. Even for her." Her words landed with a quiet thud in my chest. Extravagant. A trip to the Amalfi Coast she'd posted about last month, the new sports car in her driveway. Her lifestyle had always seemed beyond the means of her marketing job at a luxury resort. Where was the money coming from? The quiet suspicion I'd been nursing began to grow, unfurling like a dark, venomous bloom aboarding the plane to Aspen. My mind was a storm of questions. I clutched the gift-wrapped journal, trying to focus on the joy of surprising my father, but Chloe's voice was a discordant note in the back of my mind. Her lie wasn't a casual fib. It felt like a carefully placed stone, meant to divert the course of a river, landed in the crisp mountain air of Aspen and drove the familiar route to my father's house in the quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of Willow Creek. As I turned onto our street, my breath caught. Cars lined both sides of the road, and a warm, golden light spilled from every window of the house, silhouetting the figures of guests inside. The low thrum of music and laughter drifted out into the cool evening air. The party wasn't cancelled. It was in full swing. My sister had lied, and I had a terrible feeling I was about to walk into the heart of the reason why. Stepping through the front door was like entering a different dimension from the one Chloe had painted. The house was alive, filled with the familiar faces of family, friends, and neighbors. In the center of it all stood my father, by the grand stone fireplace, looking hale and vibrant as he laughed at a story a friend was telling. My mother, Catherine, drifted near the kitchen, a gracious hostess ensuring glasses were full, while Chloe flitted through the crowd, a champagne flute in hand, her designer dress shimmering under the soft lighting. Aunt Genevieve caught my eye from across the living room and gave me a small, questioning smile. I forced one in return, but my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Why did she want to keep me from this? I wove my way through the guests, the box containing the journal held tightly in my hands. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, as I reached him. His face broke into a wide, wonderful grin, the lines around his eyes crinkling. He pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home. "Ilara. What a surprise. I thought you were buried under a mountain of work in Portland." As I stepped back, I saw Chloe watching me from a few feet away. For a split second, her eyes were wide with something that looked like panic, before her expression smoothed back into a practiced, cool indifference. My mother glanced from me to Chloe, then quickly looked away, her hands fussing unnecessarily with a floral arrangement on a side table. Their shared anxiety was a palpable thing, a secret current running between them. Spent the next hour making small talk, but my senses were on high alert. I watched my mother and sister, noticing the swift, furtive glances they exchanged when they thought no one was looking, the nervous way my mother twisted the ring on her finger. They were co-conspirators in something, and the air around them crackled with it. I found Aunt Genevieve by the dessert table, where she was contemplating a slice of chocolate torte. "I thought the party was cancelled," I said, keeping my voice low. She placed the torte on her plate, her movements deliberate. "Cancelled? Darling, your father has been planning this night for months. It was Chloe who told everyone you weren't able to make it." My stomach coiled. So the lie wasn't just to me, it was to everyone. She hadn't just tried to keep me away, she had tried to erase my presence entirely. I asked Genevieve if she'd noticed anything else. She leaned in, her voice a confidential whisper. "Chloe's spending has become spectacular. That trip to Italy wasn't a quick getaway, it was 2 weeks of 5-star hotels and private tours. And that watch I mentioned? It's a Patek Philippe. I saw her at a boutique in town a few weeks ago, dropping an amount of money that would make a banker blush." My mind flashed back to the phone call, to her rushed, brittle tone. Italy. A watch worth a down payment on a house. The puzzle pieces were beginning to form a picture I didn't want to see. I glanced over at Chloe, who was now laughing, a little too loudly, with one of her friends, a diamond bracelet on her wrist catching the light. My mother stood nearby, smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her posture was rigid, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. A chill traced its way down my spine. That vague, unexplained deposit in my bank account. Chloe's sudden, stratospheric wealth. The desperate lie to keep me in Portland. It was all connected, I was sure of it. I wanted to march over and confront her, to demand an explanation in front of everyone. But I held back. I needed more than a gut feeling. As I moved toward the kitchen to help clear some glasses, Chloe brushed past me, her expensive perfume sharp and cloying. "Didn't expect to see you here," she murmured, her gaze fixed on a point just over my shoulder. "Thought you were too busy with your sustainable fabrics." The condescension in her voice was a familiar sting. "I wouldn't miss Dad's birthday," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. She gave a tight, humorless smile and walked away, her heels clicking in agitated rhythm on the slate floor. My mother continued to avoid my gaze, busying herself by arranging canapés that were already perfectly arranged. Their shared secret was a fortress, and I was on the outside. Aunt Genevieve found me again by the window overlooking the snow-dusted garden. Her expression was serious. "I don't know what's going on, Ilara," she said softly, "but your sister has been acting like a cornered animal for weeks. And your mother. She's protecting her. Whatever it is, be careful." My heart hammered against my ribs. The pieces were swirling, not yet locked into place, but the pattern was undeniable. The lies, the money, the nervous glance, it all pointed to a betrayal far bigger than a cancelled party invitation. I leaned against the cool glass of the window, taking a deep breath of the pine-scented air. This celebration was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. The party flowed on, the atmosphere thick with a deceptive conviviality. I stood beside my father as he unwrapped his gifts, his genuine delight a small anchor in my swirling sea of anxiety. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked up, I'd catch Chloe's gaze for a fleeting second before she'd look away, or see my mother observing me with a strained, unreadable expression. As my mother and Aunt Genevieve brought out the cake, its candles flickering like tiny stars, everyone gathered around the dining table. My father stood at the head, his face glowing with happiness. He was about to make the first cut when he paused, setting the knife down. He turned to me, his smile fading, replaced by a look of sober inquiry that seemed to still the very air in the room. "Elara," he said, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that commanded the attention of every person present. "The $150,000 I sent you. What have you done with it?" My heart didn't just skip a beat, it felt as if it had stopped altogether. $150,000. The number echoed in the cavernous silence of my mind. My wine glass tilted in my hand, its contents sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "What? What do you mean?" I stammered, the words feeling thick and clumsy on my tongue. The room froze. The cheerful chatter ceased. Every eye was on me. I looked at my father, whose gaze was unwavering, patiently waiting for an answer I didn't have. My throat felt tight, constricted. I knew nothing about this money. The boutique fund was one thing, a clear and discussed gift. But this? Another $150,000. Before I could form another coherent thought, Chloe lurched into the silence. "She probably just invested it and forgot, Dad," she said, her laugh high and brittle, a sound completely out of place in the tense atmosphere. You know Elara, so focused on her work. Her hands were twisting the delicate chain of her necklace, her face so pale it looked translucent. I stared at her, my confusion curdling into a sharp, pointed suspicion. Why was she so eager to provide an excuse for me? My father held up a hand, silencing her. "Chloe, I'm speaking to your sister," he said, his tone edged with an authority he rarely used. The remaining guests shifted, their discomfort a tangible presence in the room. My mother, standing beside Chloe, gripped her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Aunt Genevieve, leaning against the far wall, watched the scene unfold with narrowed, intelligent eyes, as if she were witnessing the inevitable conclusion of a play she'd seen rehearsed many times. The air grew heavier, pregnant with unspoken truths. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing pulse. "Dad, I don't know anything about $150,000, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to control it. "I received the $500,000 for the boutique, and I'm so grateful. But this other money. I never saw it." My words hung in the air, each one a small, hard stone dropped into a deep well. Chloe's eyes widened, a flicker of pure terror in their depths. She opened her mouth to speak again, but my father's glare was a physical force that pinned her in place. "Elara," he said, his voice low and deliberate, forcing me to meet his gaze. "I opened a joint investment account with funds for both you and your sister. $150,000 for each of you, entirely separate from the boutique money. It was meant as a personal nest egg, for your futures, for your dreams." He paused, his eyes moving from me to Chloe and back again. "Are you telling me you knew nothing about it?" My stomach plummeted. A separate account. For both of us. A wave of nausea washed over me. I shook my head, my hands now trembling visibly. "No, Dad. I swear to you. I never received a notification. I never even heard about it until this very second." My voice rose, tinged with a dawning, horrified anger. How could I not know about a sum of money that significant? My gaze locked onto Chloe. She was gripping the back of a dining chair, her face a mask of desperation. She refused to look at me, her eyes fixed on the intricate pattern of the Persian rug. Chloe tried one last, feeble defense. "Dad, maybe there was some kind of clerical error," she stammered, the words tumbling over one another. "A mix-up at the bank. You know how those things can be." But the excuse was tissue-thin, and the desperate way she avoided my eyes was a confession in itself. Why, Mother stepped forward then, placing a hand on Chloe's arm, a gesture of solidarity that sent a fresh stab of pain through my heart. But she said nothing. Her silence was a verdict. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes, once so warm, now burned with a cold fire I had never seen. Enough, he said, his voice like the crack of a whip. He looked at me one last time. Elara, you are absolutely certain? I could only nod, my throat too tight for words. The room felt like it was shrinking, the air thick and unbreathable. Every guest was a statue, a silent witness to the public dismantling of a family. This was no longer about money. It was about a foundation of trust that was crumbling into dust before my very eyes. The dining room had become a courtroom. The festive decorations seemed to mock the cold, hard reality that had just been laid bare. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my gaze fixed on Chloe, who looked as if she might collapse under the weight of my father's stare. He took a measured step toward the table, his voice low but resonating with a controlled fury. Let me be perfectly clear, he said, not just to us but to the entire room. I set up that account with 2 deposits of $150,000. One for Elara, one for Chloe. I trusted you both. His words were like gavel strikes, punctuating the suffocating silence. My mind was reeling. A gift I never knew I had received, a future I never knew had been stolen. He turned his full attention to Chloe, his eyes narrowed to slits. And you, Chloe? What did you do with your share? Her lips parted, but only a choked sound escaped. She shot a wild, pleading look at our mother, who remained frozen, a statue of complicity. Finally, Chloe found her voice, a thin, reedy whisper. I made some investments, Dad. For the future. Smart choices. Her eyes darted around the room, landing everywhere but on him or me. Investments, he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. Is that what you call a Patek Philippe watch? A first-class trip to the Amalfi Coast? Your aunt tells me you've been spending money as if it were water. I glanced at Aunt Genevieve, who gave a slow, somber nod. My heart pounded a sick, heavy rhythm. It was all true. She had been living a fantasy life on my future. Our mother finally moved, stepping forward, her voice trembling. Richard, please, she pleaded. Not here. We can discuss this in private. My father didn't even look at her. His gaze was still locked on Chloe, but his next question was for me. Elara, you are telling me you never accessed that account? Never saw a single dollar? I swear, Dad, I whispered, my voice raw. I didn't even know it existed. His jaw clenched. He turned back to Chloe, and his voice rose, no longer controlled. Then where is Elara's money, Chloe? Because I know for a fact it was transferred out of that account 6 weeks ago. Chloe's carefully constructed composure finally shattered. Her face crumpled, and tears began to stream down her cheeks, leaving dark tracks in her perfect makeup. It was a mistake, she sobbed, her words barely coherent. I thought it was all for me. I didn't mean. Her words were cut short as my father slammed his open palm down on the oak table. The crystal glasses jumped, a loud, violent sound that made everyone flinch. You thought, he roared, his voice shaking with a rage I had never witnessed. You took $150,000 that did not belong to you and you squandered it? On what? Shoes? Parties? A white-hot anger surged through me, eclipsing the shock and the pain. All those years of her subtle condescension, her life of effortless luxuriate had all been a lie, funded by me. I turned to my mother, my last hope for an ally, for some semblance of justice. Mom? I asked, my voice breaking. Did you know about this? She flinched as if I had struck her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her lips pressed into a thin, white line of guilt. My father's voice dropped again, becoming deadly calm. Catherine. You were part of this, weren't you? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a panicked denial that was more telling than any confession. Richard, it got out of hand. Chloe was in some debt, and I thought we could put it back before anyone knew. Put it back? My voice was a strangled cry. They had gambled with my dream, with the gift my father had given me, and called it a fixable problem. With a terrifying stillness, my father pulled out his phone. His fingers were steady as he unlocked the screen, his face a mask of cold resolve. "I'm calling the police," he said, his voice flat and final. Chloe let out a strangled gasp. "Dad, no. Please," she begged, the tears coming in earnest now. My mother grabbed his arm, her voice frantic. "Richard, don't do this to our family. Please, she's your daughter." He shook her off, his expression devoid of any warmth. "Family doesn't steal from family. You both knew exactly what you were doing." He held the phone to his ear, his voice shockingly calm as he spoke to the dispatcher. "Yes, I'd like to report a theft at my home in Willow Creek. The amount is $150,000. The few remaining guests began to melt away, slipping out the front door, their faces a mixture of pity and horror. My father ended the call and turned to his wife and his other daughter, his words falling like chips of ice into the ruined evening. "You are both out of my house, and out of my life. And you will pay back every single cent." I stood there, gasping for air that wouldn't come, the sound of police sirens growing louder in the distance. My family wasn't just broken. It had been deliberately, irrevocably, destroyed. The Aspen police station was a world away from the warmth of my father's home. It was a place of fluorescent lights, beige walls, and the sterile smell of disinfectant. I sat in a hard plastic chair in the waiting area, my arms wrapped around myself as if to hold my fractured world together. My father paced nearby, his face a grim, unreadable mask. Aunt Genevieve sat beside me, a silent, comforting presence, a folder of documents resting on her lap. Chloe and Catherine were in separate interrogation rooms, their new reality a stark and unforgiving one. An officer with a tired, kind face approached us. "Mr. Vance, Ms. Vance. We have their preliminary statements. I think you should hear this." He led us to an observation room with a one-way mirror. Through the glass, I could see Chloe at a metal table, her expensive dress now looking crumpled and out of place. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. In another room, my mother sat with her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. A wave of something pity, anger, profound loss washed over me. "Your sister admitted everything," the officer began, his voice professional and detached. "She confessed to accessing the joint investment account your father established. She withdrew your $150,000 share 6 weeks ago. She maintained she initially thought the entire sum was intended for her." "And did she say why?" I asked, my own voice sounding distant, as if it belonged to someone else. The officer nodded, consulting his notes. "She stated she had accumulated significant personal debt. Credit cards, personal loans. The money was used to cover those, as well as for travel, luxury goods, and a down payment on her new car. By her own admission, there is less than $5,000 left." $5,000. From 150. The number was so absurd it was almost laughable. I looked at my father, who stood rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly a muscle jumped in his cheek. He was staring at Chloe through the glass with an expression of utter desolation. "And my mother?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Catherine Vance admitted her complicity," the officer continued. "She knew about the withdrawal after the fact. She provided Chloe with financial advice on how to conceal the transaction, hoping they could replenish the funds over time without anyone discovering the theft." Replenish the funds. The lie was layered, a tangled web of deceit they had woven together. Aunt Genevieve opened her folder. "I have documentation," she said, her voice firm. She handed a sheaf of papers to the officer. "Credit card statements I had access to from helping with their accounts last year. Receipts I found. Flight itineraries. She spent thousands at Chanel, paid for a suite at the Hotel de Paris in Monaco. It's all there." The officer scanned the documents. "This corroborates her story. She made no effort to be discreet with the spending. Once the money was in her personal account, she treated it as her own." I stared at the black and white copies of receipts, my stolen future itemized in neat, cruel columns. A Birkin bag. A diamond bracelet. First-class flights to Rome. Each purchase was a separate betrayal. Through the glass, I saw Chloe, stripped of her glamour and confidence, looking small and lost. My mother looked defeated, aged 10 years in a single night. They had not only stolen from me, they had stolen from themselves, trading their family, their integrity, for a fleeting illusion of wealth. The officer turned back to us. Given the amount, this is felony theft, a Class 3 felony in Colorado. They are facing significant consequences. Potentially 2 to 6 years in prison, substantial fines, and mandatory restitution. He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at me. But I have to be honest with you, Ms. Vance. With the money all but gone, recovering the full amount through restitution will be a long and difficult road. We can seize assets, but it's unlikely to cover the total. I nodded numbly. The justice system could provide consequences, but it couldn't restore what had been lost. My father's voice, when it came, was hard as granite. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. There will be no leniency from this family. The officer made a note. They will be held overnight and arraigned tomorrow morning. We will need your formal statement, Ms. Vance, whenever you're ready. I felt a pang of something complex, not guilt, but a deep sorrow for the finality of it all. They had made their choices. Now, we all had to live with them. As we walked out of the observation room, Aunt Genevieve squeezed my shoulder. You are doing the necessary thing, Alara, she said softly. I wasn't sure if it was the right thing, or simply the only thing left to do. The truth was a cold, sharp-edged weapon, and it had just severed my family in two. All I had left was the long, arduous task of figuring out how to put the pieces of my own life back together. In the quiet, heavy weeks that followed, Aspen's winter began to thaw, but the chill in our family remained. I stayed in my father's house, moving through the familiar rooms that now felt cavernous and empty. He had asked me to meet with his lawyer, Ms. Albright, a sharp, compassionate woman who had handled our family's affairs for years. Her office, with its view of the snow-capped mountains, felt like a formal stage for the final act of our family's tragedy. Richard has made some significant decisions regarding his estate, Ms. Albright began, her voice gentle but firm. My father sat across from me, his face etched with a sorrow that seemed to have settled deep into his bones. I've had my will redrafted, Alara, he said, his eyes meeting mine. The house, the investment portfolio, my entire estate. It all goes to you. His words didn't land with the weight of a gift, but of a burden. The Willow Creek house, worth a small fortune. The assets he had spent a lifetime building. All of it, now mine by default. Dad, are you sure? I asked, my voice small. He nodded, a gesture of grim finality. They betrayed a fundamental trust, Alara. Not just mine, but yours. This is the consequence. Ms. Albright slid a document across the polished mahogany desk. My name was there in crisp, black ink, Alara Vance, sole beneficiary. Seeing it in writing made it real. It wasn't a victory, it was a testament to how much we had lost. She then updated me on the legal proceedings. Chloe and Catherine both pleaded guilty, she explained. Given their lack of prior offenses, the judge was lenient on prison time. They were sentenced to 5 years of probation. They are also legally mandated to pay full restitution of $150,000 to you, plus court fines. Restitution. The word sounded hollow. From the police report, I knew there was almost nothing left. How can they possibly pay it back? I asked. Aunt Genevieve, who had insisted on being there for me, spoke up. Chloe is trying, she said, her tone neutral. She sold the sports car at a significant loss, I might add. She's been consigning the handbags, the jewelry, that ridiculous watch. All told, she's managed to gather about $35,000. $35,000. It was a pittance. A fraction of what she had so carelessly spent. And Catherine? I asked, a familiar ache in my chest. Genevieve sighed. She sold off most of her own jewelry and a few valuable art pieces. Maybe another $15,000. They've pooled it together. $50,000 in total. It was a start, but a vast, seemingly insurmountable gulf remained. The court has established a payment plan based on their income, Ms. Albright added. It will be a long process, Ilara. Years, most likely. Any missed payment is a violation of their probation and could result in jail time. Years. The word hung in the air. My sister and my mother, their futures now defined by debt and court-ordered payments, tethered to the consequences of a single, greedy act. I don't care how long it takes, my father said, his voice low and hard. They will honor it. There was no room for negotiation in his tone. He had lost his wife and his daughter, and in their place, he had erected a wall of unyielding principle. I learned from Aunt Genevieve that Chloe and Catherine had moved out of Aspen. They couldn't bear the shame, the whispers, the pitying looks from people they'd known their entire lives. They rented a small, bleak apartment in a town an hour away. Chloe, who once managed marketing for a 5-star resort, was working as a waitress. My mother, once a prominent figure in Aspen's social circles, had taken a part-time job as a receptionist. Their lives had been stripped down to the bare, unglamorous essentials of survival and repentance. Felt a strange, hollow ache when I pictured it. Not satisfaction, not even anger anymore. Just a profound and bottomless sadness for the family I thought I had, and for the two women who had lost their way so completely. Aunt Genevieve reached across the table and took my hand. Her touch was warm and steady. You are stronger than this pain, Ilara, she said softly. You will build something new from these ashes. My father stood up, gesturing to the window that looked out on the sprawling, beautiful property. This is your home now, he said. Make it yours. As I left the lawyer's office, the legal documents heavy in my bag, the reality settled over me. I had gained a future of financial security, but I had lost a past I could never reclaim. A year can change everything. It can soften the sharpest edges of grief and allow new life to grow in the spaces where things were broken. 1 year after that terrible night, I stood on a bustling street in the heart of Aspen, the crisp mountain air filling my lungs. Above me, a simple, elegant sign read, "The Wandering Thread." The boutique was my sanctuary, my testament to resilience. The morning sun streamed through the large front windows, illuminating shelves of hand-dyed yarns, bolts of organic linen and hemp, and racks of clothing made by local artisans. The $500,000 my father had given me, the gift untainted by betrayal, had been transformed from a number in a bank account into this living, breathing reality. Opening the store was an act of reclaiming my own narrative. After the legal proceedings concluded, the decision to leave Portland felt inevitable. My life there, once a symbol of independence, now felt lonely. Aspen was home, and my father and I needed to heal together. With Aunt Genevieve's help, I slowly began to transform the Willow Creek house. We painted walls, rearranged furniture, and filled the quiet rooms with music and the scent of baking bread, creating new memories to layer over the painful ones. Building the Wandering Thread was the hardest and most rewarding work of my life. I poured every ounce of my energy and my father's gift into it, leasing the perfect space, designing an interior that was both rustic and modern, and traveling to meet weavers and designers whose work aligned with my values. The first few months were a terrifying blur of long hours and sleepless nights spent poring over spreadsheets. But slowly, a community began to form around the shop. Hikers would stop in for merino wool socks, artists would buy skeins of naturally dyed yarn, and tourists and locals alike were drawn to the unique, story-rich clothing. Within 6 months, we were profitable. A feature in a local lifestyle magazine called my shop Aspen's Soulful New Heart, and I felt a quiet, steady pride bloom within me, a feeling I had earned through my own vision and hard work. My life settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. My relationship with my father, forged in the crucible of our shared loss, became deeper and more honest than it had ever been. He would stop by the shop most afternoons with a cup of tea for me, his presence a quiet comfort. Our Sunday dinners with Aunt Genevieve became a cherished ritual, filled with easy laughter and genuine affection. We were a smaller family now, but a stronger one, bound by truth and mutual respect, rarely heard from Chloe or Catherine. Small, sporadic restitution payments would appear in my account, silent, digital reminders of their fractured existence on the periphery of our lives. I knew they were still living in that small apartment, chipping away at an immense debt. I didn't harbor any ill will toward them, but the chasm they had created was too wide to cross. Forgiveness, I was learning, was not the same as reconciliation. I could forgive them for my own peace of mind, but I could not let the toxicity of their choices back into the healthy life I was so carefully building. One cool autumn evening, I sat at the large wooden table in the back of my shop, sketching designs for my own small collection of knitwear. The city lights of Aspen began to twinkle outside as dusk settled over the mountains. I thought about the money, the sum that had built my dream and the sum that had shattered my family. It had never really been about the dollars and cents. It had been about integrity, honesty, and respect. Chloe and Catherine's greed had cost them their home, their community, and their family. Their story was a cautionary tale about what happens when you value appearances over authenticity. Looking back, the greatest lesson wasn't about loss. It was about truth. The courage to face an ugly truth, to speak it out loud, and to build a life upon its solid, unshakable foundation. That was what had saved me. It was the truth that had strengthened my bond with my father and Aunt Genevieve. It was the truth that had guided every choice I made in creating my business. As I locked the front door of the Wandering Thread, I took a deep breath, the night air clean and cold. I looked up at the vast, star-dusted sky arching over the Rocky Mountains. This was my home. This was my future. It wasn't the one I had imagined, but it was real, it was beautiful, and it was entirely mine, woven from the strongest, most resilient threads of all. Greed may unravel, but a life built on truth will always endure.